Hello everybody and welcome to Jim's Radio Shop. Today we're going to be working on a General Electric KL96 radio, and we're going to be doing the initial checkout of it. So we'll be looking at it together for the first time in some detail. Now I got a number of parts for this radio. I got the main radio chassis, which you see here, and then I have this set of selectors. Looks to be in pretty good shape at a glance. And knobs here, screws, and the like. This has been supplied to me out of the cabinet, so I just have these parts that you see, and another part I have to go get it. So let me just sorry for all the shakiness. And I'll be right back with the next part. Okay. Here is the next part. Hoping I'm showing it where you can see it. So it's got some words on it. The General Electric Beamascope. And below it says no aerial, no ground, reduces local static. So when they say no aerial, what they mean is you don't have to hang a wire up high in the sky, which is of course a big hassle. So you could buy their radio, and with this antenna, no need for an aerial antenna. Now, frankly, I've never seen one of these before. So just taking a look at it here. Oops. I don't want anything to fall off of it. Out of it. Let's see. Well, this is clearly the rotating control. And it just locks in there, and it's not locked just as well. Keep that out. So there must be a knob on the front of the radio you turn, and it causes this radio to rotate. This radio antenna to rotate. It's got a copper plate on the top. Copper sheet. You can see it's soldered there. Let me just take a peek and see if I'm in the... Yeah, okay, I'm in the camera. On the other side you can see the same thing, only it looks a lot more like copper, doesn't it? So this will be interesting. Seems to be in very good shape, except for the wires, and we'll see a lot of this on this radio. The insulation has just gone so brittle, it's just breaking off and disappearing. So that's maybe a bit of a problem. These wires carry on up inside the antenna, and they're not accessible, and you can bet they're in the same condition. So, you know what, we're not going to be able to do much with this in the condition it's in. So I'm going to take it and put it away again where it's safe, and keep it out of my shop. It's a great big thing. We'll be using test equipment to supply signals anyway. I'll be right back. Okay. So we're left with the main radio chassis, and let me just check the view again, because you're even at this distance you can make some observations with me. First one is when I move the chassis around, I can see right away that these IF cans are as loose as can be. This one's not quite as bad. This one's terrible. So, you know, that could just be that the screws are loose underneath, you know, the nuts. But I think it's telling us a bad story. The cans are also collapsed in here a little bit. So I don't know, somebody's monkeyed around with it. Phew. Well, these haven't been turned. At least, you know, not turned in the last 20, 30 years. So let me put you where you got a little better view of this now. Zoom in. Okay, we'll continue our initial inspection of this guy. Well, he has all his tubes. Well, I'm going to assume it's the kind of radio that's only been in one person's hands for a long, long time. And they decided to put some money into it and get it fixed up. So, someone's attempted to remove the dust and dirt, and they've done a fairly good job. Looks like it was a little while ago. The tubes had not... Well, I was going to say, it looks like the tubes were never extracted during that cleaning process, because I can see the dirt on top is gone. It's been cleaned off, but down below, but you know what, I don't think it matters much, to be frank. Okay, here's the stringing situation. Let's just take a deep breath and hope it's good. So the string is glued, or there might even be a bit of the glue right there. Glued, you know, this side's loose, but this side is still fixed. Still fixed to this, which means this is in its original position and this is the original string. I might be relatively sure about that. So, good news is it's here. Bad news is it's probably going to break. And it may well break even while I'm working here, which I don't like. Now, there's another string here. This one looks like the band changing. That's a little too hard. Turn by hand. Let's get one of the knobs. Two very big knobs here. Let's put this one on. Nice knobs. Okay. And that's the band changing switch there. Turn this way. Okay, well, you should be able to see the letter A in there. Change bands. A. PB, police band, is probably what that is. So that's one end. Police band. A. And it's black. Or is it? It's just dirty. Why would they have it like that? Well, you can see it coming out the bottom now. That's the end there. That's quite a few bands. Why would that be dark? Well, I don't know. Nothing's coming to mind. You know, wouldn't you expect the whole thing to be affected the same way? That's quite curious. Okay. It has a magic eye. There's the magic eye tube. A little unusual to be in this part of the radio behind the pointer, but yeah. probably on off. Probably on off and tone. And this is probably volume here. I think the early makers of the radio said to themselves, people really don't want to have to adjust the volume every time they turn the radio on. So why would you ever put the on-off switch with the volume? So they put it with the tone switch. And in the end, it actually makes more sense to have it on the volume. As I'm sure you all have experienced many, many times. You've probably never had anything that the on-off switch was hooked up to the tone control. Yeah, I've always been a little curious about that, so that's what I think about it. Now, here I'm turning the tuning knob. Very stiff. Where's the stiffness coming from? Let's see. So, in early assessment of the tuning system, if it's not loose and free, you need to identify where the drag is coming from. Rather quickly, in fact. So let me turn it back this way here. You can see the tuning capacitor there. And maybe hard to see on the camera, but I can see the tuning capacitor move a little bit. Now it's very hard to turn this control. And I'm trying to feel differences in the mechanical force needed to move things. In the hopes that I can determine if it's binding in here or binding where the knob goes through the chassis. And it's not readily apparent to me. It's very, very stiff. So the basic assessment there is it's in very good shape. It just needs a little lubrication in the right spot. And now this is a typical part for getting damaged. People don't understand what it is. They don't know anything about radios, but they own one like this. And they'll reach in and they'll push it and do stuff to it. Particularly if the string is broken and the radio's not tuning at all. They fiddle around a bit, and these plates get pushed and bent. This one looks perfect though. I don't think anything's happened to it. That's all. So this has been sitting, of course this is inside a big cabinet. Sitting where it shouldn't get damaged now. That's interesting. I just found something odd here. Come from down here, and the intention of this is to freeze these controls. There you go. Put it on where it's supposed to be. Because once these adjustments are made, they should not be touched, except during the repair process after something's been done to the radio. Well, I see another, this is a bad news story for this radio, that's for sure. The wires, I didn't like that sound either. Seems funny. The wires coming to the back of the Magic Eye tube, the insulation is so stiff it's cracked in quite a few places. Which means if I bend these wires, the insulation is going to come off, they'll all require a replacement. It's really not something I want to make happen by accident. There's the light bulbs here, which I'm going to... Let's just take a look at those. Okay, well this one's gotten crunched. So we'll take that out of there. A little bit of glass left in it there. There we go. Look at the number on it. It's a pretty nice looking shiny bulb here. What's left of it? Where's the number? .47. Okay, we'll take the other one out before it becomes a smash too while we're doing the work. 47. Yeah, it looks good. I'll just throw it in my temporary light bulb spot, and this goes in the garbage pile. Pile of small parts. Okay, the wire itself is pretty good shape. So those are the main observations I can make from the top of the radio. Well, I guess I can make one more. Well, let's take a look at this. This is the speaker lead. It appears to have been cut here. Yeah, for all the people who have this kind of old radio with a big speaker in the bottom and something like this going to it with more than 2 wires, you need to be aware that there's high voltage on this. Yeah. So this is not a good sign. This is a dangerous thing. You can get a very serious shock from this. You know, not so with a little table radio, the famous American 5-tube radio sets. You're not going to get a shock from the speaker. But I'm talking about getting a shock. Let's look at the cord. Yeah, the cord is really nicely flexible. It's pretty good. I find that with a lot of very old cords are very flexible, but not always now. Kind of selective degradation on this wire. There's a really bad spot there, so no question this is shot. What do we have inside of it? A jute material. But you can see the rubber has deteriorated. Now, you know, the interesting question with this is, well, how come here? Look at it. It's perfectly serviceable here. In fact, it's better than a lot of stuff. It even feels better than the modern plastic one like this, which is what we're so used to, these polyvinyl coverings. This is more like the rubber. It's much nicer. Cracking all through it. Why the degradation in this area, but not in this area? And you know, who knows? This part may have been laying out the bottom of a radio. This other may have been tucked away inside under better protection. I don't think we're going to plug that in. Look at that. That's kind of munched. Well, so I'll have to replace this cord. No doubt about that. Okay, let's. Let's see how we're doing here. We're gonna the 20-minute mark. Okay. Make sure nothing surprising is happening here, and everything is safe and secure. That's good. Okay. First of all, top observation: why are these IF cans loose? And the answer is screws missing. Nut is really loose on that one. And the other one, the nuts have come loose. So that's all that is. And I think I'll just tighten it up right now. Why the cans are compressed, as if somebody gave them a real good squeeze, I don't know. Look a little closer. Maybe that's some way of trying to release them from a clip or something like that. bigger. Okay, now I'm doing this because I don't have to move parts too much. If I had to move wires and stuff, I wouldn't do this at this point. Yeah, come on, what's going on there? Something funny there. Well, it seems to be bent. It seems to be bent. Yeah, it's disfigured at the top there, so I don't know what somebody was trying to do. Who knows? Who knows what the story is? Now, okay, first thing. Has this caught your attention yet? The wire hanging, other wire hanging. Critical wire hanging, I can see that already. Okay, so these 3 wires are terminated in some kind of plug. So, these are being plugged into something. Is it this thing? I don't think so. This has its own plug and cord. Okay, so there's some similarity between all these things. Wow. That's mighty curious. Did they all reach somewhere together? Well, they'll remain a mystery for now. I'm going to guess they have something to do with the antenna. Is there an antenna connection on the back here? Yeah, up at the top there. Well, yeah, it's just going to have to stay a mystery for now. Okay, now let's see, next thing to talk about I think would be this guy right here. I mean, at a glance you can tell this is not original. It's just been shoved in under these wires here. And it's a big replacement capacitor. It's paralleling the original capacitor here. And this, which is coming from the can, is actually the ground, and it, I don't know what it was soldered to, but whatever it was, it might have been right down here. Wouldn't work too well because here it is in my hand. So that tells me that the main filter capacitor on the radio is shot, and no surprise in that for a radio this age. And that's been replaced. Replacement may be good. It may be bad also. Pretty bound to remove it and put some brand new capacitors in. They're not expensive and they take up less space yet. And of course they're going to be reliable way into the future. There's no really, there's no damage in here, so nothing's been, you know, sometimes people take these things and they put them down on stuff, things go up inside them, stuff happens. And as a repair person, it's a little tricky to really recognize when something like that has occurred. The things may be in the wrong position, pushed over, things like that, and you've got to kind of sleuth it a little bit to spot that. Or previous repairs that have been made and things have been pushed around, left hanging like this. Well, I'm seeing these these capacitors here, these two, and luckily there's not too many of them. They have a characteristic where the plastic case on the outside, or early plastic material, cracks. And these large ones, these are both cracked. And with them cracked, they're probably not the correct value anymore, and worse than that, they may have absorbed moisture, and who knows what. So these are headed for replacement on this radio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, it's not something I would do right away. I would attempt to operate the radio as it is. It could be that they are fine, even though they are cracked. And it makes no sense to start replacing parts willy-nilly for a number of reasons. One is the unnecessary expense. Two, you're actually reducing the value of the radio by modernizing it. And the most important one is every time you do a repair, you risk another failure in the course of doing the work. And moving wires and things like that. Okay, I'm just continuing to examine this very, very closely. Okay, now we'll take a look at the power supply situation. There's usually, not usually, but often, that's the source of trouble. So the rectifier tube is right here. There's the leads coming out of the transformer and going straight to it. There's the wire coming back and heading for the filter capacitor, which is paralleled by this guy. It's an interesting observation that can be made in a radio like this, where it was operated significant lengths of time in its life and carried high voltages on certain components for a long period of time, long enough that dust slowly accumulating in the radio will find its way to these high voltage locations because of the charge attraction. So you can recognize high voltage points, if you like. And a good example is right off the capacitor. There's a wire, and it has a layer of sort of loosely dusted on dirt and dust. It's about the best way I can describe it. If you don't shake the radio too hard or vacuum it, you can see these things and realize, hey, that's where the high voltage is. It's very apparent in a television. If anybody's done television work, and you look at the high voltage on the picture tube, this is the old type of television. The dust accumulation there is exactly what I'm talking about here. So I can see the high voltage end of this capacitor is here. Yeah, capacitor with some goopiness on it. But again, I wouldn't start replacing these willy-nilly. So going back to the power supply, looking for, there's usually a large resistor involved with the power supplies. Not in this one though. And of course this one's using the speaker as an inductor. Using the electromagnetic coil that's on the speaker has an inductor in the power supply filter circuit. No resistor. So we look at other large resistors. If it's a large resistor, it's the designer expected that part of the circuit to carry a fairly significant current, and would usually size the resistor to become fairly warm. Many other resistors have such tiny currents they are not going to heat up at all. But the ones that heat up are the ones that suffer failures. So look at this big guy here. He looks pretty good. So that's the end of our inspection there. So let's tally up what we found here. IF cans loose. Doesn't seem to be a big deal. Wires hanging out the bottom. Going to have to investigate what they are. Filter capacitor to change. Not a big deal. Recognize other capacitors may be in trouble. But of course, that any radio of this age is going to have capacitor troubles. No obvious damage. Anything. All the tubes in the top, which is good. And the tuning capacitor turns. It's quite stiff, the whole thing's stiff. I suspect it's just a little bit of lubrication. The band selector dial. You know, that's the thing that had the A and the B and then went black. But interestingly enough, there's a light right behind it. So maybe with that light on, what we think is dark now will actually be light enough. And guess what? I just saw where the wires go. I'm always happy when these things happen. So here's this piece that I just concluded earlier. You know, there's its 3 leads. It doesn't need 3. It's plugged with 3 plugs. It doesn't need more wires. Well, guess what? There, 1, 2, 3. Slide those things in. Which one's which? You got me. With any luck, I'll get some information off the internet, and we'll be able to figure it out. Or it's going to have to be a trial and error, or by deduction. So now the big question: can this radio be brought back to life? Yes, this is a really good radio to attempt to bring back to life. Could there still be things which will make it impossible? There's an unlikely possibility of a failure of the power supply transformer. There's I'd say, 10-20% chance, I don't know how to put a number on it, that damage has been done inside these. Okay, it's still pretty loose, isn't it? Inside these. Simply because they're loose and something's been going on. Could there be bad tubes in here? Well, that'll be the next thing that we work on in the next video. We'll just be going through the tubes and testing them. So we'll know soon enough. Could the radio be just about ready to play as it is? That's a good question. Well, I think the short answer is, yeah, this could very well be, except for this probe, which I'll be repairing. That's the power cord is shot. As it sits here, it's possible. It's just possible that if we just replace that power cord and turn this thing on, it will work. It's in that kind of condition. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for watching. This initial checkout of the General Electric KL96. See you in the next video.